The fluorescent lights in the emergency department of St. Mary's Hospital hummed faintly, giving the place that sterile glow that never really slept. It was 2 in the morning in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the ER was in one of its quietest stretches, the kind of lull that nurses both appreciated and distrusted. A slow night could flip on its head in seconds. Everyone knew that. Dr. Michael Harrington sat behind the triage desk, flipping through a chart half-heartedly, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. He was 42, in his 15th year of ER shifts, and he carried that mix of experience and fatigue that seasoned ER physicians wore like a second skin. He wasn't burned out, not completely, but the weight of long nights, countless traumas, and years of seeing both miracles and tragedies had etched itself into the lines around his eyes. At 2:07 a.m., the sliding glass doors hissed open. A man rushed in, holding the hand of a boy who couldn't have been more than 8. The kid's jeans were torn at the knee, a thin trail of blood running down his shin. But what caught Michael's eye wasn't the scrape. It was the way the boy's small chest heaved as he tried to hold back tears. The father's voice cracked as he shouted toward the desk. "My son, he fell off his bike. I think his arm is broken. Please, someone help us." Nurse Erica, a wiry brunette in her 30s with 10 years of night shifts under her belt, jumped up immediately. "Let's get him into room 5, she said, guiding them toward a curtained bay. Michael followed, coffee abandoned. The boy, whose name turned out to be Jacob, winced as he climbed onto the bed. His right forearm was swollen, bent in that unnatural way doctors recognized instantly. A simple fracture, Michael thought. Painful, yes, but manageable. Nothing like the gunshot wounds, overdoses, or car crash victims who usually own the ER at night. "Hey, buddy," Michael said, pulling up a stool so he could look Jacob in the eye. "I'm Dr. Harrington. Looks like you had a rough ride tonight." Jacob tried to be brave. He sniffled, pressing his lips together as tears clung stubbornly to his lashes. His dad, Mark, hovered, eyes darting from his son's arm to the monitor on the wall to Michael's face. Parents often did that, searching every expression for clues about how bad things really were. "It hurts," Jacob whispered. "I know," Michael said softly. "We'll get you some medicine for the pain, and then we'll fix you up. You're in good hands." Mark nodded quickly. "Do you need me to sign anything?" "Registration will need some paperwork," Erica said. "Insurance, consent forms. I can take you over while Dr. Harrington and I get him settled." Mark hesitated. His eyes flickered to his son. "I'll stay with him," Michael said, noticing the hesitation. "Go handle the forms. He'll be fine." Mark exhaled, kissed Jacob on the forehead, and followed Erica toward the registration desk. Michael got to work. He ordered an X-ray, then told another nurse to prep pain medication. Jacob relaxed slightly when the morphine started to whack, his little body unwinding under the hospital blanket. "You played baseball?" Michael asked, trying to keep him calm. Jacob nodded weakly. "Shortstop. Good position. I used to play first base. Guess what? Bones heal. You'll be back on the field before you know it." Jacob managed a tiny smile. Minutes passed. The ER stayed quiet. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor beeped steadily. Michael scribbled notes into the chart, waiting for the transporter to come take Jacob for his X-ray. That was when it happened. Michael left the bay for less than 3 minutes. He stepped out to grab a new splint kit from the supply room. When he came back, the bed was empty. At first, he thought Jacob had slipped off to use the restroom. Kids sometimes did that without telling anyone. But the bathroom door near the bay was wide open, the light off, and the bed still had the indent of his small body in the sheets. Michael frowned. "Jacob," he called softly. No answer. He checked behind the curtain. Nothing. It was odd, too odd. A child with a fractured arm didn't just hop off the bed and wander around. Michael pushed the curtain aside and scanned the hallway. No sign of the boy. Erica came back from the desk with Jacob's father. Mark's hands were full of paperwork, his expression tight with exhaustion. "All set," he said. "How's he?" He stopped cold when he saw the empty bed. His voice rose instantly. "Where's Jacob?" Michael's chest tightened. "He was right hey." "What do you mean, right hey?" Mark's face turned red, panic dripping into every word. "You told me he'd be safe. Where is my son?" Michael raised both hands, trying to keep control of the situation. "Relax. He can't have gone far. I'll find him." But even as he said it, unease gnawed at his gut. This wasn't normal. Kids didn't just vanish from an ER bay. Erica rushed to the nurse's station. "Check the cameras," she snapped at security over the phone. "Now!" Mark's breathing grew heavier, almost frantic. "Don't tell me to relax. He's 8 years old. He's hurt. He wouldn't just get up and walk out." His eyes burned into Michael's. "What the hell kind of hospital are you running here?" Michael didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was already racing through possibilities, a mix-up with transport, a staff member moving him to imaging without noting it, or, his stomach churned, something worse. He strode quickly down the hallway, scanning every open bay. Nothing. Just empty stretchers, half-sleeping patients, and tired nurses. When he returned, Mark was pacing, hands in his hair. "Somebody took him." Mark muttered, almost to himself. "Somebody took my boy." Michael forced calm into his voice, though inside he felt the same dread. "We'll find him." He didn't just disappear. But the truth was harder to shake. In that quiet ER, under the sterile lights and watchful staff, a little boy had vanished without a trace. And Michael, for the first time in years, felt fear crawl up his spine. The first 10 minutes after Jacob vanished felt like a blur. In an ER, time usually moved in beats of vital signs, alarms, and footsteps. But in those minutes, every sound was muffled under the weight of a single question hanging in the sterile air. Where was the little boy? Mark's pacing had turned frantic. His hands clenched into fists, then opened again, as though he couldn't decide whether to cry, shout, or punch a wall. His eyes darted between Michael and the hallway as if his son might suddenly reappear. "You said he'd be safe," Mark spat, voice breaking. "You promised me." Michael swallowed hard. He had been a physician long enough to know that parents didn't hear reassurance once fear took over. Still, he tried. "We searching the hospital. He can't have gone far. Please, let me." "Don't tell me he can't have gone far." Mark shouted, drawing the attention of patients in nearby bays. "My kid's 8 years old, his arm's broken, and is gone. What the hell happened in the 3 minutes I wasn't here?" Michael didn't answer, because the truth was, he didn't know Erica was already on the phone with hospital security. Her voice was clipped, professional, but edged with urgency. "We need eyes on every exit. Pediatric patient missing from ER Bay 5. Last seen less than 10 minutes ago." Within moments, 2 security officers arrived, tall, broad men in navy polos with radios clipped to their belts. One started asking questions while the other checked nearby hallways. "Name?" the first officer asked. "Jacob," Michael supplied. 8 years old. Fractured arm. Dark hair, blue shirt. Mark cut in, voice sharp. He couldn't walk off on his own. Someone moved him. Someone took him. The officer's jaw tightened. "We'll check cameras. Nobody gets out without us knowing." Michael wanted to believe that, but he also knew the limitations of hospital security systems. Old cameras, blind spots, footage that sometimes cut out without warning. They split into teams. Erica and another nurse swept the patient rooms. Security fanned out toward exits. Michael moved down the east corridor himself, checking bathrooms, alcoves, even supply closets. He called Jacob's name more times than he could count, each unanswered echo tightening the knot in his chest. He passed a janitor who shook his head. "Haven't seen a kid." He stopped by radiology. The tech on duty frowned. Nope, nobody came down here for imaging. We've been quiet all night. Mark trailed behind Michael like a shadow, refusing to be left out of the search. His anger had simmered into something colder now, suspicion. You sure you don't know where he is? Mark asked suddenly, voice low but sharp. Michael spun, stung. What are you implying? You left him, Mark said. His eyes burned. You left my son alone. Now he's gone. Michael forced down the rising defensiveness. I stepped away for 3 minutes. He was sedated. He stopped. Saying it out loud made it sound even more impossible. Mark stepped closer. If anything happens to him, that's on you. Michael didn't argue. He just turned back to the search point 15 minutes later. Security pulled Michael and Mark into the monitoring room. A wall of small, flickering screens cast a dim glow across the cramped space. Hey, the officer said, rewinding footage from a hallway near the ER bays. On screen, Jacob appeared, small and slow, his hospital gown trailing. His arm was cradled against his chest. He wasn't alone. Beside him walked an adult, tall, in scrubs, face partially hidden by a surgical mask. Michael leaned closer. Pause. Zoom. The image blurred with static. The staff badge on the chest was unreadable. The figure's movements were casual, not forceful, but Jacob's small steps looked hesitant, almost reluctant. Who is that? Mark demanded. Which one of you is that? Michael shook his head. I don't know. Could be anyone, a nurse, a tech, even a resident. Security officer muttered. We'll cross-check against staff rosters. But here's the problem. He tapped the keyboard. The footage jumped forward, skipping 30 seconds. When the feed returned, the hallway was empty. No Jacob. No adult. Don't tell me the footage just disappeared. Mark snapped. The officer grimaced. This system's old. Gaps happen. But yeah, the segment's missing. Mark slammed a fist against the desk. That's my son. You expect me to believe the cameras just happened to cut out the second he's taken. Michael's stomach sank. Because Mark wasn't wrong. The timing wasn't just suspicious. It was terrifying. Back in the ER, the atmosphere had shifted. Nurses whispered nervously at the station. Patients craned their necks, overhearing bits of conversation. The calm of a slow night had shattered into something jagged and uneasy. Hospital administration arrived, a middle-aged supervisor in a gray blazer who looked more concerned about liability than Jacob. We need to keep this quiet, she told Michael under her breath. Last thing we need is a panic or the press sniffing around. Michael stared at her. A child is missing. You're worried about headlines. Her eyes hardened. I'm worried about lawsuits. Find the kid before this gets out. Michael wanted to shout at her, but Mark's sudden voice cut through the tension like a knife. This is bullshit, he roared. My son's gone, and all you people care about is covering your asses. His voice cracked. If you don't find him, I swear to God, I'll bring every cop in Pittsburgh down on this place. The room fell silent. Even the machines seemed to hold their beeping. Just past 3 a.m., a nurse reported seeing movement near the old West Wing, a section of a hospital under renovation, usually locked off. Michael and Mark followed security there. The hall smelled of dust and plaster. Yellow caution tape drooped across the entrance. Halfway down, they found something that stopped Mark cold. Jacob's hospital bracelet, lying on the floor. Mark knelt, picking it up with trembling hands. His voice shook. He was right here. Michael's stomach clenched. Whoever had taken Jacob knew their way around the hospital, knew where cameras were sparse, where traffic was light. This wasn't random. Hours passed. Every corner was checked, every staff member questioned. But still, no Jacob. Mark's grief turned volatile. He cornered Michael near the supply room, eyes wild. You knew, he hissed. You knew someone took him and you didn't stop it. That's not true, Michael said firmly, though his throat was dry. Mark shoved him against the wall. You left him. You let him get taken. Security pulled him away before it escalated further. But Michael felt the sting of those words sink deep. Because under all the logic, under all the protocols and procedures, he knew one thing for certain. If he hadn't stepped out of that room, Jacob would still be there. And now, somewhere in the dark corners of St. Mary's Hospital, the little boy's life hung in the balance. Michael clenched his fists, forcing back the weight of guilt. There would be time for blame later. Right now, there was only one mission: find Jacob. The hospital clock ticked past 5 a.m., but the night felt endless. St. Mary's ER, usually a machine of routine and order, now moved with the frantic energy of a place unraveling. A boy had vanished inside its walls, and every person could feel the weight of that fact. Michael hadn't sat down in hours. His body ached, his eyes burned, but adrenaline kept him sharp. Each time he thought about resting, he saw Jacob's empty bed in his mind and pushed himself harder. Then came the break. A security officer's voice buzzed through the radio. We've got him. West Wing basement. Michael and Mark sprinted. Their footsteps echoed against the half-renovated walls, plaster dust clinging to their shoes. The West Wing basement was a space most staff forgot existed, dim, silent, smelling faintly of mildew and old metal. When they reached the corridor, 2 guards were already there, crouched beside a small figure lying on a stretcher hastily pulled from storage. Jacob. He looked impossibly small, gown crumpled, skin pale. His fractured arm was still braced, but there was blood dried around the foresight in his other arm. His eyelids fluttered weakly, as though caught between sleep and something deeper. Mark fell to his knees. Buddy, Jacob, I'm here. His voice cracked. Dad's here. Michael bent over Jacob, checking vitals. Pulse, thready. Breathing, shallow. He scanned the boy's body, noticing needle marks near his wrist that shouldn't have been there. Someone had sedated him. Michael's jaw tightened. Whoever took Jacob hadn't just led him away, they'd interfered with his care. And now, his tiny body was paying the price. Call rapid response. Michael barked. Get him to OR now. The hallways blurred as they rushed Jacob upstairs. Nurses cleared pathways, calling out stat as the gurney wheeled past. Mark never let go of his son's hand, stumbling alongside the stretcher, begging him to wake up. Stay with me, buddy. Please, just stay with me. Michael walked on the opposite side, rattling off orders. Prep for emergency surgery. Notify anesthesia. Get PEDS trauma on standby. His voice was steady, but inside, panic threatened to crack through. This wasn't just a patient anymore. This was a child whose safety he had sworn to protect, and failed. When they reached the OR doors, Mark tried to follow. A nurse blocked him gently. Sir, you can't come in. I'm not leaving him. Mark's voice broke. He shoved against the door, tears streaking his face. That's my son. That's my baby. Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. Mark, let us try. Please. For the first time all night, Mark's fury softened. He looked into Michael's eyes, raw and desperate. Save him. Whatever it takes. Michael nodded, then pushed through the swinging doors. The bright lights above the OR table turned Jacob into something fragile, porcelain-like. Machines beeped steadily, but his vitals wavered, unstable. Michael scrubbed in quickly, hands trembling as he slipped into sterile gloves. Beside him, the surgical team moved with precision. An anesthesiologist monitored Jacob's breathing, whispering, "Come on, little guy." Michael steadied his voice. "All right, we stabilize, then address internal bleeding. Let's move." The first incision revealed the damage, abdominal bleeding, likely worsened by the sedation drugs. Michael's chest tightened. Whoever tampered with Jacob hadn't just endangered him, they had accelerated his decline. The team worked furiously. Suction word, Clamps clicked, hands moved in coordinated rhythm. For brief moments, Jacob's numbers improved, and hope flickered. But then, just as quickly, alarms blared. Heart rate dropping. Blood pressure crashing. Epi now. Michael shouted. Chest compressions. Go. Go. The anesthesiologist injected. A nurse began compressions, small and rapid against the boy's chest. Michael's throat ached. He had been in countless codes before, but this one felt different. Each beep of the monitor was a countdown, each second a reminder of the promise he'd made to a father in the ER. Minutes stretched like hours. Sweat stung Michael's eyes beneath his mask. And then, silence. The monitor flatlined. Time of death, a nurse asked quietly. Michael stared at the still form on the table. His hands hovered, unwilling to stop. But reality pressed down like stone. They had thrown everything they had at Jacob's tiny body, and it hadn't been enough. His voice cracked when he finally said it. Time of death, 6:12 a.m. The words echoed in the OR, heavy and irreversible. Someone turned off the monitors. The room grew unnaturally quiet. Michael stepped back, staring at the boy's face. His chest didn't rise, his hand didn't twitch. He looked peaceful, as if asleep. But Michael knew better. A child had died on his table. Outside, Mark was pacing like a caged animal. When Michael emerged from the OR, mask dangling from his neck, Mark froze. One look at Michael's face, and Mark knew. No, he whispered. No, tell me you saved him. Michael's throat tightened. He wanted to lie, to give the man something, anything, to hold on to. But he couldn't. I'm sorry, he said softly. We did everything. His heart, it couldn't take it. Mark stumbled back as if struck. His hands clutched his head, his body folding into itself. A guttural sound tore from his chest, raw and animal, the kind of grief that had no words. Nurses looked away, some with tears in their eyes. Michael reached out, but Mark shoved him back. Don't touch me. You let him die. Michael didn't argue. He just stood there, absorbing the man's rage, because he knew it was true in one way. He had left Jacob alone, and that choice could never be undone. The sun rose over Pittsburgh, spilling light across the hospital windows. The ER returned to its usual rhythm. But for those who had been part of the night, nothing felt normal. Security launched a full investigation. Who was the masked figure on the cameras? How had they accessed Jacob? Theories swirled. A disgruntled staff member, a stranger in stolen scrubs, maybe even a family dispute no one knew about. But answers came slow, and grief moved faster. Mark sat in a family room, silent now, staring at the floor. His son was gone. His anger had burned out, leaving only emptiness. Michael stood outside the room, exhausted. Every fiber of him wanted to go home, collapse, forget. But he couldn't. Jacob's face was etched into his memory. He thought about how the boy had looked that first night, nervous, brave, clutching his father's hand. He thought about how quickly trust had been broken. And he thought about the vow every doctor made. First, do no harm. But harm had come anyway later. In the locker room, Michael sat alone. His scrubs were stained, his hands trembling. He pressed his palms to his face and let out a sound he hadn't made in years, something between a... Doctors were trained to compartmentalize, to accept death as part of medicine. But this wasn't natural. This wasn't inevitable. This was a boy stolen from safety, mishandled, lost. Michael knew he would carry it forever. As he stood to leave, his reflection caught in the mirror. His eyes looked older, worn, haunted. He whispered to himself, almost as a confession. He should have lived. Mark walked out of St. Mary's with an empty car seat in the back of his truck. He didn't look back. He couldn't. Inside, Michael lingered in the empty ER bay where Jacob had once lain. The sheets were clean now, the bed remade, as if nothing had happened. But he knew. Everyone who had lived through that night knew. A child had vanished, been found, fought for, and lost. And the question that haunted them all remained: who had taken Jacob, and why? The hospital might one day uncover the truth, or it might never come. But for Michael, the truth didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the weight he would carry, the weight of a promise broken, of a boy he couldn't save.